Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madhunisha Katoj, and I will be presenting on the topic Gender Inequality Faced Globally in the Textile and Garment Industry. So, to understand the impacts of gender inequality, one must understand what is gender inequality to begin with. It is discrimination on the basis of gender, causing one gender to be prioritized over another. It is not natural and it is socially constructed. It is an obstacle for economic progress and the human development because it creates crime against women. Nearly 2.4 billion women globally don't have the same economic rights as men. It affects every single economic industry, such as film industry, textile industry, etc. The textile industry is primarily made of female workers, yet despite the huge workforce being female, the crimes against them are not addressed and are often thrown under the rug. To put it into perspective, more than 70% of the garment workers in China are women, compared to 85% in Bangladesh and as high as 90% in Cambodia. Out of 45 million people, at least 60% of them are female workers in India. So, despite this heavy number of the workforce being women, they are still not respected and are abused verbally and physically in their workplace. Now, while it is true that the garment and textile industry has revolutionized women by giving them a way of earning and becoming independent, we should all acknowledge that. But while it is important to acknowledge that, it is just as crucial to recognize the mistreatment and harassment faced in the same industry. The garment industry has a long standing history of abuse and stress of all kinds. Rural women already live under this fear of being ostracized from their community if they were to stand up for themselves. They're already mistreated and isolated as it is, so they don't want to subject themselves to more suffering, even if that suffering was to offer them a single chance of escaping. The women that do want to fight against this situation are forced to endure all sorts of harassment and abuse at home and in their workplace just to earn a measly wage. Now, due to their social conditioning, underprivileged women are less likely to fight for their rights, as they're made to believe that they don't even have any. They're made to feel hopeless by their own supervisors in the sense that they will have, if they leave this job, they will have nowhere to go. This kind of social conditioning keeps them trapped where they are and they stay vulnerable to exploitation. Female workers are also continue to be preferred due to the wrong perception that they are more docile and controllable in doing their jobs. Therefore, they will be less likely to rebel against the unfair work policies. So now I'm going to be talking about some injustices faced in the workplace and some possible remediations. So a huge problem, and not just in the textile industry, but in every single industry, is the wage gap difference. Many women are unaware of the minimum wage laws, regulations on the working hours, safeguards against workplace harassment, and so many more laws that are supposed to protect them. This lack of knowledge puts them in an extremely vulnerable position as they can be manipulated to accepting lower salaries or subjecting them to poor working conditions without the fear of repercussions. Their supervisors can do whatever they want due to the lack of knowledge of their female employees. Now, to put it into perspective, the minimum wage of garment workers in Bangladesh is approximately 4,000 INR per month. This was taken from a study which has been referenced later at the end of the presentation. Every study that I have referenced or any sort of data that I have referenced in this will be at the end of the presentation. Now, continuing, in Ahmedabad, most earn under 165 rupees per day. In Lahore, many earn under 82 rupees. Now, workers reported that if they ask for better wages, they are told that the work will be given to someone else. And not just this, 51% of the female workers also reported that not the entire negotiating with their boss regarding their wage did not take them anywhere. In fact, their supervisors told them to leave the job and go hunt for another job if they were so desperate about the wages to be increased. Now, this shows the lack of sensitivity from their own employers who are supposed to help and care for their female workers. Yet, these are the same people that are pushing them into this cycle of abuse and harassment. Now, between powerful managements and obliging factory inspectors, the protection of these such labor laws is something that only exists on paper. Even though these labor laws are supposed to protect the women, they really don't. It's just on paper. None of the effects have been transferred uh, physically in their workplace environments. For example, 73% of the women workers reported themselves as permanent, but when asked to show their letters of confirmation or when asked if they had enjoyed the attendant employee benefits, none of them had the answer to that. This also adds to the concept of invisible workers because these women put in so much work, put in so much hour, and they go through so much mistreatment. They take out the time of their day and um, they compromise on their health and family even sometimes, and despite all of that they are not paid well, and on top of that their employees do not even give them physical proof of the work that they have done, so when they were to get a job later they will not have any sort of physical proof to show, thus making them an invisible sort of worker. Now many studies have suggested that this large discount and retail stores have pressured manufacturers to reduce costs and speed up deliveries. So this puts even more pressure on the workers. And the factory inspections that are supposed to be conducted by brands to check the workplace environment for their female employees and every other employee is really just a sham, because the one young woman stated in the interview that has also been referenced at the end of the presentation that the management knows when the auditors are coming and they tell us what to say. They say if we complain, the factory would close and we would lose our jobs. This sort of misinformation is exactly what is keeping these young women trapped in their nightmares of a workplace. Now, these supervisors take advantage of their female workers due to their illiteracy. The lack of education pulls justice even further away from them. And aside from that, they're often only employed in low level jobs. Approximately 80% of the industry's production workforce is female throughout the world, yet the majority of the supervisors are still male. And management often prefer hiring women with less education and not promoting them further even when they gain experience, which helps keep these women in lower positions. And this preference of hiring women with less education comes from the belief that uneducated women are familiar with their oppression and are less likely to rebel against their employees. Now, some studies have even shown how young girls have developed such irregular menstrual cycles once they have joined such high pressure garment factory work. They have complained of pain, they have complained of headaches, and any other they have complained of injuries uh, due to the equipment not being taken care by the factory. And despite this, they have to constantly inhale toxic fumes from fabric dye along with dust and tiny fiber particles. Their health is neglected, and as a result, they get respiratory issues and so many more issues, such as finger piercings, are really common. And the maintenance of the machines are poorly done, leading to a whole lot of other physical and mental health issues. Yet the employers do not care about the health of their employees as long as the production units are taken care of. Daycare facilities is also a huge challenge faced by these female workers. Now, from the survey conducted, out of 118 factories surveyed by the Karnataka State Commission, only 12 admitted to not having daycares. And among those with daycares, there was typically only one daycare for over 1,000 workers. And only 6% of employees' children benefited from these factory provided daycares because these facilities often lacked proper staff and resources, leading to uh, distrust and by the employers because they did not want to keep their children in a daycare that is not properly maintained. And these factories go ahead to exploit legal loopholes by designing daycares without ensuring their functional adequacy. Therefore, at the end of the report, they can mention that they also have a daycare facility, whereas while the workers will know that this daycare facility has never helped them. So they only care about development on paper and their own reputation and not about the workers that they're supposed to help and benefit. Now, 95% of the surveyed workers also stated that they would continue with their current employer if childcare standards were improved. So, daycare facilities are also a huge problem for these women because majority of the workforce are women, and many of them are married or with children. So, it is important to also understand their needs and where they are coming from. Now, I will be talking about the workplace abuse and mistreatment these women face. So the apparel industry everywhere has been long plagued by incidents of workplace harassment and mistreatment, particularly for female employees. For example, a study among 24 garment factories in Bangladesh found that line chefs are those who are responsible for selecting supervisors, reported an average confidence level of 84% for male trainees. The average number for female supervisors was 10% below. Due to this patriarchal belief, men are hired as supervisors because they are seen as deserving of the position of power, as they can be controlling, while women are seen as something to be controlled instead. However, there is no evidence that supports this claim, yet it- even then, these female employees are kept at low level positions and are not allowed to be promoted or progress in their own career, which they have put so much hard work in. Now, there has also been a direct connection observed between the increase in gender based violence and harassment and the purchasing practices of several international fashion brands, especially during the pandemic. These brands include the extremely popular brands that we all use and utilize in our daily lives. For example, Levi's, Marks and Spencer's, Next, Nike, Target, Walmart, American Eagle, etc. The way these companies conduct their purchasing and supply chain operations has contributed to the rise in gender-based violence and harassment among the workers. And due to the highly stressful production goals, women are subjected to verbal abuse every single day. In fact, an interview with this young female worker in this industry in India only, she went ahead to say that verbal abuse was now a part of their daily lives, and sometimes when they did not finish their production unit or were working slow, they were hit by their own equipment because their supervisors would pick up the equipment and throw it at them. And there is no one to complain about this because their own supervisors that are supposed to provide them a safe place are the same people that are perpetuating this violent, vicious cycle. So many factory workers simply don't complain because it takes them nowhere. And at the end of the day, only finishing production targets matter. Most of all, they are afraid of losing their jobs, which is why they keep silent. So an example is when Nike was revealed to be supplied by a factory that treated their workers in severe abuse, which include being kicked and being forced to stay under the sun after not reaching the target production. Not only that, but to talk about the sexual harassment that women so constantly face in this workplace, uh, by just look at the surveys. And survey in Myanmar revealed that 42.5% of the women across 14 garment factories have experienced sexual harassment at work. There have been countless, in fact, thousands of stories in India alone, much less global industries, where female workers have been harassed by their own employers and their own colleagues, and they have not been able to come out because no action has been taken, and they are simply given they are like any woman who speaks up for herself is branded with the title, oh, you're talking too much, you've been given too much leeway, just focus on your work. This is the treatment they receive when they speak out. In fact, there has been this horrifying crime story of this female worker in India alone, uh, which has been linked later in the article, that she was being stalked by her supervisor and she spoke up about it, and nobody cared to listen, nobody cared to lend out a helping hand to her unless eventually she was murdered by her same supervisor. And only then a lot of female colleague and friends of hers started coming forward to say that they also feel unsafe and they have also been harassed by this same supervisor that was harassing her. So it should not get to the point that so many young women have to fear for their lives and lose their lives even every single day just for change to come in this industry. Now, for migrant workers, the situation is even worse. They're often isolated from their communities and they lack support systems, making them easy targets for harassment. The male dominated structure of garment factories further perpetuates abuse. They lack access to education and resources, and because of that, they are trapped in the cycle of illiteracy that leaves them vulnerable to exploitation. And without the knowledge of their rights or the ability to advocate for themselves, migrant workers become easy targets for supervisors who continue to take advantage of their dangerous situation. Now, I'm going to be talking about some remediations because to support these workers, we must address the root causes of their industry. It is our obligation to help them as well as we consume products from the same factories that employ them in such abusive conditions. So, one huge change that can help the female workers in this industry is legal awareness. Legal awareness is so important that it cannot be stressed upon enough. For example, legal awareness among female workers is a critical step in addressing gender inequality. Many workers, especially migrant laborers, are unaware of their legal rights and protections, as I mentioned before. And in this sort of tough condition where they lack so much support and social standing, education will be their greatest weapon. The fear of losing their current job does not mean prevention of a new one. They must see through the lies of their supervisor. It is imperative that they understand that it is imperative that they understand their own rights and do not shy away from standing up for themselves. Their fear of ostracization should be eradicated, and they must be taught the importance of social support and reaching out for help despite what society tells them. It only takes one voice to start a revolution. Now, another huge change that should come through is policy changes. Now, even though the workers can educate themselves, they can take care of themselves. Aside from that, the major change in this industry will only come when the employers, when the factories, when the companies that are employing these factories make a change. The franchise has to change. If the workers just change, there will not be a lot of difference. So now I'm going to be talking about what sort of policy changes can help these workers. For example, strong anti-harassment policy should be implemented along with fostering an inclusive working environment. Supervisors must be held accountable by the companies. They must have this fear of losing their job or, in fact, facing legal repercussions if they were to step out of the line with their female employees. And in fact, supervisors themselves should give a safe place for their female employees so that they can come forward and share any issues they are feeling to their own supervisors. The companies must also establish a clear, well communicated guideline that prohibits any form of harassment, discrimination, abuse, and ensures that these policies are strictly enforced at every single level of the organization. Employers should provide comprehensive skill training and education programs as well so that every female worker has the opportunity to build new skills and thrive. Supervisors should encourage women to be in high authority positions as well. They should not discourage women. In fact, they should help them understand how they can build their confidence to go to higher level positions. The government should also launch initiatives to focus on these invisible workers and commend them for their efforts. And the factories that do a checkup of the living conditions and the workplace conditions for their workers should be careful about how they're conducting them, and these factories should make sure that when they're conducting such checkups, the supervisors do not play any single part in influencing the employees' responses to how the workplace has been for them. So thank you. This was my presentation. And these are the references. Thank you.